Hi, I'm Bruce Burke with Point Bulletins, and this is our first collab. This is Fintech Confidential, Tedd Huff and Bruce Burke with Point Bulletins. We're discussing the biggest stories of the week that Point Bulletin put out this week.
Bruce, thanks for having me on, man. This is going to be a lot of fun. You covered a bunch of really important topics this week. And, I just want to quickly just run over it so everybody knows what we're going to be talking about. We're going to talk about Jack Dorsey's launch of Bluesky Social. We're going to be talking about how Mark Zuckerberg's net worth has just plummeted due to some of the things that he's done there at the company. We'll also be talking about Dogecoin and Shiba Inu and how all of that's been transpiring over here the last week with Elon taking over Twitter. We'll also be talking about how banks are running into ransomware attacks and how they're handling in that. And then we'll also be talking about how the crypto winter, which bothers me a little bit, is impacting Robinhood and how they feel like they're going to pull through it. And last but not least, we're going to be talking about the impact that's happened later this week around all of the financial technology and actually just the technology industry in general, how they're laying off and how they're downsizing and how they're getting prepared for the change in the economic climate. So, Bruce, where do you want to start, man? We got so much stuff.
Let's start on a positive note. It seems like there's a lot of negative news, right? A lot of layoffs, downturns, tightening of belts, changing of hands. But let's look at blue skies, some positivity. Let's start with some Bluesky, which is Jack Dorsey's new social media platform. And when I say platform, I don't think platform like Twitter. I think like what Steve Jobs created at Next and brought back to Apple, like the web, all the platform that he built, that all the Apple stuff was built on top of. I think it's something like that, where people can write apps to it and people can create things inside of it. And as long as you're writing to his APIs or to his platform, you're able to move from area to area to area and bring your friends, your money, your data, everything with you, is my understanding. What was your take on that, Ted? That's what I got out of it.
Yeah, so I guess I'm looking at it slightly differently. So from my perspective, I'm seeing the Bluesky social network being more of a way to manage your data, your information, to secure that, to determine how you're going to allow people to use it, where they're going to be able to allow to use it. And really, I'm seeing it be more of a spin on identity and identity management, because, they were very clear saying they're not going to store your social posts on the blockchain, but the blockchain is a very good place to have zero trust identity. And so when you start to get into that and you start to leverage that piece of it, it really allows you to transverse the web as we know it today and what will actually be coming in the Web3 in a way where you're not having to use usernames and passwords. You're not having to re-authenticate yourself. Two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication really starts to fall off. And so I see it more of an identity play and an identity platform play for social networks. And I think it's going to it really opens it up for a bunch of different things. Now, I have a friend of mine that's also just launched a similar project, but different. It's more around the marketing side of the house, and it's called Caden. So John Roa, who I had the opportunity to work with on a number of projects, just launched a company called Caden that kind of falls in the same space, but it's more focused on the marketing side versus the social networking side.
I saw that. I like the idea of what they said about the user maintains their identity. In thinking about Web3, that's kind of the push of Web3. But then they're saying we're not going to have your information on the blockchain, or your information is not going to be backed up to the blockchain. So for those who aren't familiar, the difference between Web 2 and Web 3, in Web 2, you would come to Facebook or any other social network. You would own all the data. You would come with a user ID and password. You would plug that in, and all your information is stored on Facebook, and everything's there. With Web3, you're bringing your information to that network, your friends, your money, your inventions, your ideas, your illustrations, your music, everything that you create, your creations essentially, and you have that in some kind of container that you're bringing to that social network, from what my understanding. And I think that very much aligns with what you're saying. I think we're kind of in juxtaposition over how it's actually going to work for the end user and what that looks like for the end user. You know?
Yeah. And I really look at it as, when you're looking at this, that leveraging the distributed networks and the decentralization of the blockchain is really what's going to allow you. And I look at it this as, it's not just social, right? So yeah, you might be able to leverage it to get into the Meta's metaverse, and you might be able to allow you to get into Twitter, right? It might let you get into those things, but I think it takes it to the next level and really allows you to take your persona, bring your NFTs along with you into games, into other experiences, and really allows you to start interfacing cross-platform, and it unifies a lot of stuff. Now, here's the piece that really did stick with me, that bothers me a little bit, is although this is a really cool idea that allows you to be interoperable across the bases, it's really a centralization of Web3, which kind of bothers me a little bit, because the idea of Web3 is decentralization and being able to own it yourself and to be able to control it yourself. And this just feels like a Web2 version of Web3 a little bit right now.
Yeah, I don't think we're fully at Web 3 yet. I think we're at like Web 2.2, maybe 2.3 in some cases. There's a lot of money being thrown at Web 3. I mean, Amacoa, A16Z, everybody and their brother is throwing billions of dollars at Web 3, but I think it's going to take trillions before Web3 is really Web3 and not just a advancement of Web2.
Well, I mean, this just kind of moves us into our next story, right? And Zuckerberg, his net worth dropped by like $11 billion in a matter of hours after having his annual report, right? Or his quarterly report. And that dude has spent billions of dollars on the metaverse. And like you just said, it's just going to continue to go. And we're still trying to figure out what it's like. Are we going to have the experience piece of it is really the piece that's going to tie it together, and who's going to, and I guess let me kind of back up. When I start thinking about metaverse, there's three pieces for me. One is the ability for me to build on top of it. So, and then the second piece is the ability to create a community and like-minded individuals in the same space. And then the third one is allowing me to have control over my information. So this is a big three that I really think about. And, we're still trying to figure out what level of fidelity do you need in order to do this? Are we going to be looking at, oh my gosh, skeuomorphic, where it's just like real life but digital? Is it going to be something that falls into like a Roblox or a Minecraft style, where it's easier to do? It may not be high fidelity, but it's easier to manage.
Yeah, lo-fi. Yeah.
So I mean, I really look at that, but I think it's interesting that Zuck has spent so much money on this. Their revenue continues to fall, but he continues to spend money on this because we're all trying to figure it out. And I'm happy and excited that he's continued to put money into it to figure out where it needs to go. Because if the people that don't have the money, don't put into it, we're not going to move forward. But I mean, kind of give me your feeling on how that is impacting stuff.
As far as like what I've seen so far, and he faked the legs, everybody knows that one, right? But as far as like what I've seen so far from this, it seems like Zuckerberg's vision of the metaverse is very similar to PlayStation Home, which came out on it didn't launch with the PlayStation 3, but it launched on the PlayStation 3. And I was so enthused by that. It wasn't a virtual world because there was no virtual headset. You played it on your flat screen TV or your tube TV with PlayStation 3. But you were in a virtual world. You had a virtual character. You went to movies with people. You went bowling. You danced. You went to the mall. You could buy objects for and those guys had legs way back then. And he could have ported that. He could have bought that from Sony for probably a lot less than what he spent and ported that into Facebook somehow and or into his, servers and platforms and done that. But beyond that, I think for the metaverse to really take off, to really take off and to really become something different than Web 2, there needs to be that killer app. They always talked about the killer app in mobile, right? What was the killer app, right? And I don't think there's a very compelling reason yet to go to the metaverse. It seems like most of the people that are going there, it's cryptocurrency related, so it's financially related. They're playing Axie, they're doing different things. They're trading NFTs. They're buying coins. It's crypto related action right now that's in metaverse. And I asked a question a couple of weeks ago on Facebook, and I posted around all the different ones. Does cryptocurrency necessarily need to be a part of Web3, or can we do Web3 with just fiat currency, and fintech, not just plain old, vanilla currency, but so that's what I'm looking at, and that's the way I see it. I don't see it that there's a lot of critics right now of Zuckerberg, and he's taken a lot of hits. And I made a point to say in the short film that we did that he gets it, that a lot of people don't understand, but he thinks it's vitally important to our future. And I think he, like he was with Facebook, I think he's a person that gets a single vision and just goes with it. And I think he's got blinders on and he's just going towards what he sees. And I'm not sure if he's going to be successful or not. Lord knows he was hugely successful with Facebook. It's the largest and catapulted him to billionaire status. I thought he was a fool when he turned down $300 million from Microsoft, but apparently I don't know anything. So, but that's where I'm at with it,
So, and I agree. I think it is fundamental to the future of where we're heading. Will it be what we think it is now? No, but I think it is fundamental that someone with the access and the power and the money to move us forward in that area is super, super important. And that, you asked that question about, do you think cryptocurrency and the metaverse go together? I struggle to see how it wouldn't, because you run into the identity problem that we talked about earlier with your traditional fiats. It's really hard to have a zero trust transaction where you don't have to validate an identity. You don't have to validate the source. You don't have to, there's all these potential openings. And when you get into the metaverse, you don't want to have to guess or question whether or not it actually worked, or if something's going to break, and that's really kind of where I look at it, is that I think cryptocurrency is going to be a big piece of it. Now, these altcoins like Dogecoin and Shiba Inu, I don't think are going to be a big piece of that. Even though Elon, keeps trying to pump it up. And honestly, I think Elon is just more happy about having Elon's name in the news versus having anything to do with Dogecoin or Shiba Inu. But hey, you know what? He continues to push that. But I'm I think it's interesting that everybody seems to think that he's going to incorporate Dogecoin into Twitter. I am one that doesn't believe that he's going to do that, but I'd love to get your take on it.
I think he might integrate cryptocurrency into Twitter down the line. I don't think he's going to do it initially because that's going to cost money. And right now he doesn't want to spend money. He wants to make money. I think if he made it so you could pay that $8 monthly with, Doge or anything else, right? I think, it's going to cost him some money to do that. And I don't think he wants to do that now. But and
at the same time, I mean, he with him taking over, I mean, obviously he did a bunch of layoffs. Everybody's familiar with that and aware of that. But he also disassembled all of the crypto wallet team as well. So that was completely eliminated. So that I'm looking at what he's doing, and I think he's trying to get it down to the basic function first, and then figure out what to build back on top of it.
Yeah, and monetize it quickly. I found it interesting that in the report that we released that at its peak market cap, that something like Dogecoin, which is essentially air, could have the same market cap as Hewlett Packard, that Steve Jobs got his first job at, when he was a kid, and, has been a huge corporation. A monster corporation that's been in our lives our entire life, right? And, considered, almost intangible. It's so large, right? And something like Dogecoin that's just a meme joke, that came out, it's
surreal.
Almost it's surreal to me. It really is. And I just, I grew up in traditional fiat currency world, and I'm really trying to get a grip on this stuff. And I understand this value is speculative and value is value, but I just don't see it. I just can't understand how it could have the same market cap. I'm almost thrilled every day when I see one of these, and I hate to see people get hurt financially.
Oh, here you go.
I really hate to hurt. I'm suffering from economic PSTD, PTSD, whatever it is, myself on the backside of pandemic. But this cryptocurrency rise and then the fall, it was just too much to watch. Being someone who grew up with fiat currency, I'm not going to go deep on that. I'm not going to go deep on this.
Well, it's kind of funny when you start to look at it. You look at HP, right? And they were a monster. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing their name during Web 1. Like Web 1, HP, that's the company that everybody knew and heard about for everything, right? Like every Web 1 company was somehow tied into HP. You go to Web 2.
All the end caps at all the retail stores, at Circuit City, at Best Buy, at any retailer you went to, all the end caps all the time was an HP product.
And now you're looking at items that people are for entertainment. And really, that's kind of how I look at Doge and Shiba Inu, is it's entertainment. So they're buying it to say that they own it because it's fun or it's funny. And so there are going to be some people that use it as a way to dollar cost average and do all other fun stuff. But most people just buy it to go, yeah, I own a couple of coins, or I own so much of it, right? And it's kind of funny, and it's kind of joke piece of it. But it is very interesting that a joke or a meme coin can have so many people, and that just tells you the power of the social side of the house. And this ties back into the metaverse thing again, and is once that social piece starts to kick in and people feel like they belong to stuff, I think it's really going to start to take off. But again, we're what was it? Dogecoin's market cap was $19.1 billion. It's just freaking crazy, man.
And not that it's a high valued token. At its height, I think it got up to 14 cents. It's not like it's worth $400 a share.
Right.
It went from less than a tenth of a cent to 14 cents, and that was like what, 134% rise or something like that. Some crazy number. Yes, it sounds great when you say, oh, it rose 134%. It's only 14 cents. So I get it. I understand. I just think that, in looking at people who are going after getting money, it seems like people that have tried to go out to crypto and make money in crypto actually ended up, a lot of them, losing money in crypto.
Mm.
And
yeah. I mean,
between Celsius and Voyage and, all these, I don't need to tell you, it's been in the news. It's every day, the exchanges, the this, the that. Every day somebody's getting whacked, and now they're closing down. They're saying, the new trend seems to be, okay, we're pausing trading for a while, right? We're going to get this all straightened out. 2 weeks later, everybody's like, so we're going to start trading again? And they're like, we lost some more money, it turns out, when we did our investigation. And then it just, and it seems like everybody was trading with the same $1 or $2 billion. Everybody had, was claiming a single pot of money as their own, it seemed like. And, that was all that was in the market, and it's just weird. Watching it, from the start of the pandemic is, it took off a little before that with Bitcoin, but watching the ups and downs through the pandemic was just, it was insane. It was insane. Anyway, on to the next topic.
Well, so it's funny. We just talked about $19.1 billion, right? And just kind of give you an idea of like scale. So we have a news article about about a meme coin at $19.1 billion valuation. And then we have another story that talks about ransomware for U.S. institutions being right around $1 billion in related payments in 2021. I think it's, again, kind of funny that we have the ransomware that's only at, and I know this is probably a bad way to put it, but only at $1 billion in a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and it becomes a news article. And the other piece is that they didn't really, the FinCEN didn't really talk about like what was used in order for these attacks or how they gained access to it. But I think it's interesting that they didn't tell us how it happened, but they were very quick to tell us it mostly came from the Russian hackers. But what other things did you pull from that story?
A big concern I had, and apparently it's been on for a while, and I understand that, government roles are government roles, but the head of FinCEN is been an acting director for almost a year now. Why there hasn't been a permanent appointment, I don't know. He seems very competent. I'm not calling into action his, he seems very competent. He seems very able. He seems very knowledgeable. He seems very, which is probably why he's in the position. But they say that the banks, they say it may be the banks are getting better at reporting it. They're starting to notice, large sums being paid to ransomware. But they also said there's a lot more ransomware going on now. So are the banks really getting better at reporting it, or are they talking with their customers and not reporting it? I don't want to, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I don't like to spread that kind of stuff. But when you said, hey, we got $1 billion in Bitcoin, and hey, there's been $1 billion of ransomware done this year. Maybe that's where those people got that $1 billion to buy that $1 billion worth of cryptocurrency, right? Maybe it's easy to spend money and spend it wildly on crazy things when you're stealing it from someone else. When it's your money, you're probably not going to spend it as quickly and easily.
Well, that, you bring up one thing. That's actually one of the benefits of crypto, right? Is the banks know what address they sent it to, and once you get it into that address, you can use tools like Chainalysis, right, to really see where it goes and what wallets it goes to. And what ends up happening eventually is you eventually get to a point where someone has had to do the KYC on it in order to get access to it, to then liquidate it into fiat. And that's the really cool part, is that you're able to find them eventually. Now, it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week, but eventually they're going to have to liquidate it in some way, shape, or form through a wallet that has been KYC'd. And so that is one of the really cool things that I see with the blockchain and with crypto, is that you're really able to trace and track. You may not know the individual's name, but you always know their address, and it is publicly available, so anybody can watch it happen, which I think is just really cool. And I think that is one of the benefits of benefits of actually, if you're going to pay ransomware, paying with crypto, is because you'll eventually be able to figure out where it went. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to get it back, but you may be able to shut down a ring or two by tracing it back.
Yeah, there was a story, I think it was about a month ago, I read, where essentially that's what happened. 2 years later, they were able to track down a ransomware attack. And I'm thinking it was they only got back like 250,000, something like that. I don't remember the story exactly, but they were patient. They watched, they waited, they, just kept on it. And eventually, I think it was almost 2 years had expired before they moved some of the money from that wallet into a KYC wallet, right? And away it went, right? And here came the feds. And I think when they caught the person rolled over on his counterparts. And so now they have 2 or 3 people in custody over it, I think is what happened. But the details are fuzzy. It was quite a while ago.
Yeah, but that just shows like some of the benefits that we have, that if it were in fiat, it'd be gone to the wind, right? They'd be in the Caymans or in Thailand or somewhere, just kind of living up life.
Yeah, it's funny that how decentralization, how something that started as, hey, we don't want to, be a part of your banking stuff, you're this, you're that. But then as soon as ETH got hurt, the first thing the guy did was start talking about, we should have like an FDIC for ETH, and I find it interesting that, as much as the crypto market wants to be decentralized, the people that are probably doing it the most good are companies like the Paxos and MasterCard forming together to be able to sell crypto through the banks. So you're going to go to a centralized authority to buy a decentralized currency. It's just crazy. I mean, an exchange is that also, but now it's the banks,
Well, if you even look at like Cardano, right? Input output Cardano, they have. Sorry, I'm getting the wrong one. It's actually FTX. So FTX has said, hey, here's how we think it should be regulated in the U.S. And I know Cardano and their chief legal officer Joel. I had a chance to sit down with him last week and just kind of. Yeah, last week. Wow, time's flying by. And just kind of go over some of the things that they're working on as well, and just how the regulatory environment is starting to look. And everybody's realized that regulation around that is just, it's using existing regulation and existing rules is not going to work. And there are so many different uses for that. And I think that's also a big reason why Robinhood has been, and I'm moving on to the next story, but why Robinhood has been so bullish on this still. They know that they're going to continue to invest in this space. They're going to continue to go in this, and they're just going to ride out, and I'm air quoting, the crypto winter which I think it's kind of funny that we call it that. You know, everything else we call it a bull market, or sorry, a bear market. But we got to make it a little bit more extreme for crypto, right?
You can't just have a hurricane. You got to have atomic force winds now. You know,
exactly.
Everything's extreme. Exactly. You know, but go ahead.
Go ahead. Sorry. No, you man. You go ahead, man.
I think in relation to this stuff with Robinhood and just the crypto in general. I mean, there's been the crypto industry in the past 6 months has been slapped around, you know, like absolutely crazy. And there seems to be a little bit of fatigue, I would think, by those $10,000 investors that have, you know, buoyed the stock market for decades now, right? The little guy, they're probably getting a little fatigued, but the whales don't seem to be getting fatigued at all. And the general consensus seems to be, hey, we still believe in it. Hey, we're still behind it. Hey, and that makes me think that, you know, and now the feds are like, well, hey, we're examining it. I just read this morning, JPM and DBS and everybody else did the trial of cross-border transfer using crypto. They're adopting it. They're looking at it. They're experimenting with it. They're working, you know, they're trying to figure out use cases. It's not going to go away, folks. Crypto is not dead. It's not going to die. But the government's not going to be happy until they've got their fingers wrapped around it tightly, because you can't let somebody take over your currency. You don't own the people anymore. You can't control the people without controlling the currency. So the government, the U.S. government, is not going to relinquish its control of currency. Bear that in mind. But they will work with these guys, and they will capitalize on the trend, and they will continue to focus on it, and they will get their hands around it. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, I mean, right now you've got two federal agencies fighting over who owns regulation of cryptocurrency, and whether it's a currency or whether it is a oh my gosh, my brain just went blank.
Security.
Thank you.
And I wasn't even paying attention.
I know. So whether it's, you know, the two agencies are fighting over whether it's a currency, a commodity currency, or whether it's a security, and they're fighting over that. And here's the big piece: is we haven't even defined what it is. So, and I think that's the first step, is we have to define what it is, and how you determine which it is, and when it is what it is. And then once we finally defined it, and we're all still working on the definition because it's so new, that once we define that, then you'll see the regulatory pieces start to fall in place. But, you know, I could talk about cross-border and stable coins and, you know, USDC type stuff, those types of things all day, but it's definitely headed that direction. Like you said, I don't see it going anywhere. I just think it being used in multiple different ways. I don't think there's just going to be one. There's probably going to be a handful. There's not going to be the thousands that there are today, but there are going to be a handful that really get used really, really well. But that's kind of where I'm looking at. And I think one of the things that Robinhood did really well with is that they did a transition from the stocks and all of that fun stuff, and they did a really smooth and nice transition into being able to acquire and trade crypto as well. And I think they did a really good job of making that transition. And I think that in and of itself has really helped the regulators look at it in a better light. And that's kind of where I'm seeing from it. They have a great user interface. They really allow the retail investor to play in the space. Do they have some control things that I'm not a big fan of? Definitely. But I like to control my own destiny as much as humanly possible. So when a company says, "Hey, we're going to halt trading, or we're going to do this because it's in our best interest," it really bothers me.
Yeah, if I was going to go trade cryptocurrency, I would probably do it with Robinhood. It seems like even Coinbase doesn't seem as dynamic as Robinhood. And I think the mobile first aspect of Robinhood, that's been a big push of theirs since day one, that they're focused on the mobile aspect of it rather than the web-based aspect, which when I think of Coinbase, I think of web-based rather than probably because of all their news and information and other sources. Robinhood doesn't really seem to focus on that aspect of it, where Coinbase seems to be contributing more to the industry with information and blogs and other ancillary information that supports their cause. And then Coinbase, essentially all you can buy is coin, right? So Robinhood, I think being diversified and still being able to trade stocks and bonds and everything else that Robinhood trades, I think that's going to help them maintain uptime as opposed to people that are just crypto exchanges. But I think things happening like the MasterCard Paxos, where people can buy from their banker rather than from an app, that may put a dent in Robinhood's plans. Maybe Robinhood wants to be that link between the bank and the consumer rather than Paxos and MasterCard.
Yeah, I guess I look at Paxos and MasterCard as being a really cool idea. And for someone like myself, and I know I am not the normal person out in the marketplace, I refuse to buy any product from my bank, because I feel like they don't have my best interest at heart. And every time that I've gone to say, hey, I'm just going to compare a product that they're offering to the marketplace. And yes, I am a fintech geek and I dive into the details, but when I compare the products that the financial institutions offer versus the independent solutions that are in the marketplace, they can never compete. And They can't compete on price. They can't compete on function. They can't compete on timeliness. They can't compete on anything. Like they just can't compete. And so I think it is a really cool idea, but the U.S. market is so mature that it's going to be really hard for a legacy financial institution that is not a digital native to keep up in the digital era. Now, they're going to have to buy and acquire and have spinoffs and all that fun stuff. But as we've seen, even with the neobanking stuff that they've tried to do, they've just killed it. And so I really think that the banks are just going to end up being, you're going to see banks becoming more of a commercial business-to-business transaction entity over time.
Yeah,
but that's just a big piece, because we're diving into an era where those who have created a great user interface and are using APIs in the background to move everything around, like with Stripe has a Stripe Treasury now, and Stripe has credit card processing, and they have bank transfer, and they have all these different things. So now Stripe has been able to enable and speed up the process for a lot of those things. And I'm moving into the next story, man. But
no, I get it. I wanted to have one little quote on the last story. What you were saying about the banks and their undigitalness, if that's a word, non-digitality, whatever the term is.
Their digital ignorance.
Their digital ignorance, exactly. Brian, that works with Brett King, I think his last name's Clagett, something like that. He posted this morning a thing. He says it was his birthday recently. Happy birthday, Brian! That he got birthday offers or wishes from Breyer's ice cream, this, that, the other. Nothing from any of his 3 different banks that he uses. Mm-hmm. No happy birthday, no well wishes, no, attaboy, no nothing. So the banks, as much as they want to say we're digital, you're not digital yet, banks. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And an email isn't digital.
No, but it's a step in the right direction.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's social. It's a little bit more social. But anyway, moving on to Stripe. You were going to go there.
Yeah. Well, and let me wrap up that in a nice little bow. The conversation I had with Chris Skinner back probably a couple months ago, we really dove into this, and it's really interesting to see, how the digital natives have really blown up and how they're really supporting all things, whether all the things in D&E, right? The diversity, inclusion, and ESG type protocols. I think the financial institutions are struggling to move out of that. They will eventually get there, but the only way they're going to do it is through acquisition or through partnerships. They're not going to be able to do it natively. There's just too much infighting going on and too many political agendas inside of the organizations that really make it impossible. And that kind of I'll just carry that over into the Stripe discussion. They did lay off 14% of their workforce just the other day. And you really look at it as, I read a little bit further into the story, right? Because I know a number of folks that were impacted in that. I got one of the guys that was part of the Google commerce group and was part of their launching the Google Pay and like all the Google online shopping. Like he went over to Stripe, and he actually was one of the guys that got hit up in that piece of it. And then I also had one of their terminal product managers over there that got let go as well. But they've all both landed in good places. I mean, they're amazing people, so I wasn't surprised by that. But then as I started looking at it, it wasn't like they quit doing this thing or they quit doing that thing. They kind of went across the board and really it appears, and this is my perception by looking at all the people that have been, it appears like anybody that was relatively new to the organization, and when I say relative, like in the last year or two.
That also said in the article, and the last line that I put in the video was some of the 14% is a cut to future hires. So maybe 4% of that is people that they're not going to hire this year that they had planned on hiring. It was, in a budget. Budgeted for. So
a hiring freeze on top of that too.
Well, not a complete freeze. They're not going to hire as many people as they were. So it's not a complete freeze. I don't think any company ever has a complete freeze on hiring unless it's my company, because there's only me. Maybe I should have stopped before I started, but it's a lot of headlines around this are obviously written, bombastically to get people to click. They're clickbait. They're, and of course I'm, putting my stories on YouTube the same way, in order to, get people there. But I think a lot of what people don't understand, like you said, most of these people that are at these firms are really amazing people that have a lot of talent. And when you think about most of these organizations are software driven. And so most of these people that are working in these companies are working in software. And when you're working in software and you're a developer or you're a front end developer, you're a web developer, you're this, you're that, you probably have less than a 1% chance of unemployment. The firms will hire you very quickly if you know how to write JavaScript. You're not going to be unemployed if you're a professional developer. It's just not going to happen. So a bunch of people may have got laid off, but a bunch of people got picked up by somebody else very quickly.
Yeah, and and it's been really interesting to watch how companies have. It's just in this last year, there have been a lot of companies that have restructured is a nice way of putting it. So like you had MX.com did one just a few weeks ago, about a month ago now, so that they could focus. They went and they changed their focus, right? And so when you change your focus, a lot of the people that you have may not be the right people for your new direction. And so I'm curious to see the changes in direction that we might see from these folks. What direction might Stripe go in now? What will their focus be on? And then, Block laid off a handful of folks, and, we really looked at it, and the number of people laid off or froze jobs for the rest of this year or for an undetermined period of time. And so I'm really curious to see as we continue in economic climate that we're in, how do people pivot? How do they start to focus? Where do they start focusing on over this period of time? And yes, it will impact other people, but it'll be really interesting to see how they leverage these cost reductions to get more focused and really see where they focus. That's the piece I'm looking forward to.
Well, you mentioned that Stripe was, had gone into treasury, had gone into this, had gone into that. I think their core business is really what keeps them afloat, processing, billions through Amazon, billions through Google, Salesforce, et cetera. Though that's their main core business. Obviously, they're going to refocus their efforts and try and find another, huge producer, of payments, finding that, is probably key in their structure, but also in looking at all these things, maybe some of this is going to result in some of the people leaving and starting whole new environments, right? Or whole new platforms or whole new ideas, it kind of, we kind of skipped over Jack's thing, but Jack's, not really, but Jack's thing is coming out of probably a good portion of it's coming out of the money that he got in the sale of Twitter to Elon. I mean, he made out pretty good on that. I'm pretty sure.
He made a couple dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got some more money to throw at things, and I tend to think that's going to be one of the things. I'm sure he doesn't have a problem finding investors. I'm sure he's not using his own capital for everything, but. Square's pretty strong. Block, that whole, grouping of companies that, Cash App, all those guys, they're all doing very well. It's one of the few
the Cash App is basically holding the company right now, which blows me away because it was a experiment. And now it holds more than half of the revenue for Block. Right now because their crypto holdings are down, but it holds half the revenue for the company. It's amazing that a person to person money transfer business can hold that much value.
Yeah, it's a commodity, I think is what it's come to be. It's to me, I've used PayPal, I've used Zelle, I've used this one, I've used that one. It's the simplest to use. It really is. They really thought about the user experience and they really simplified it. And Square was very easy to use, and I think that's what caused its uptake. It was simple. It got simpler. It was complicated in the beginning, but it got simpler. Cash App, it's kind of like a lifestyle thing more than just a, I got to pick up my part of the pizza thing. It's almost become like a lifestyle. They got the debit card now. People are using it for, money transfers to others, card to card transfers, things like that. A lot of people are using that debit card in place of a bank account now. Because it's got the same properties essentially without any of the fees, and simplicity. You can take your cash to Walgreens or any number of other locations throughout the country in the U.S. and load your Cash App card up very quickly. And I just don't see that happening with the other guys. There's just a few features that are a little bit different that I think is separating Cash App from the crowd. I think.
Yeah, definitely is separating it out. But you bring up a good point. I'm going to circle back around to this. Is it any time that you have a workforce reduction, or any time that there's a sale of a company, there are people like you mentioned that are like, you know what? I want to control my destiny. I don't want to be beholden to a person or two people deciding my future. And so what ends up happening is that they end up deciding and spinning off. And the pandemic was a big piece of that too. I mean, if you look, and I have a chart, and I'll send it to you and we can throw it up here on the screen, but I have a chart that shows like how many people were laid off or furloughed in 2020, and see how it's worked over the time. More people were laid off or furloughed in 2020 than last year and this year combined.
Wow.
Right? But out of that, so many businesses grew. So many different entrepreneurs, so many different things came to play. So, I although that these large companies are tightening their belts, I think this is opening up an opportunity for those who have an amazing idea that just haven't had that shove, that force for them to do something with it. And now this gives them that opportunity to do that. They may be able to figure out there's so many free tools out there these days. So I think you're going to see, like you said, you're going to see a lot of new things pop up and a lot of problems be solved. And you're going to start seeing them in the next 6 to 12 months pop up on the radar.
I really think, people were talking a couple of years ago about, the creator economy and the meek are going to inherit the earth and, all that stuff. And everybody's like, well, when's that going to start happening? And, I don't believe that's going to start happening. And I don't believe the creators are going to be the new economy, et cetera, et cetera. I think all the factors that we're seeing now, the layoffs, layoff, nobody ever comes back. So you're fired. That's what I put on the thumbnail. I put you're fired because it's not a layoff. You're not coming back. It's a nice way to say it, but you're not coming back to work here, and the layoffs, the downturns, the belt tightening, the lack of resources and funding. I mean, the Stripe guy really went all in, and he, there's a number of factors, right? Just the sheer shock and awe of the market right now, is a factor right now to a lot of people and a lot of companies, right? What's going on kind of is unnerving to them, right? I think the creator economy is coming out of that pressure. It's going to pressure those creatives who want to create something new, are tired of the status quo, tired of, like you said, letting the other guy control their destiny or living somebody else's agenda or making someone else rich. Who the hell wants to do that, right? I mean, everybody wants to be their own, not everybody, but everybody wants to be their own person and have their voice be heard and their mission. That being said, not everybody is going to make it, but the ones that don't will probably mix in with the ones that do, and, we'll find common cause. And, and I tend to think that platforms like what Jack is talking about, this Bluesky thing where it's a creator's platform, right? That's at its essence what it is. It's a creator's platform. And he wants people to create on it, not only just, videos and podcasts and animations and illustrations and photography, but also software. That people tend to think that software development is not creation, when in fact it's probably one of the most creative things a person could ever do in their life is write some software. So when you think creators include a lot of people, including me and Ted. Think of us in that group, please.
And we'll talk about this another time. But there are a number, and I know I keep going back to Web3, but I think Web3 is one of the catalysts for that as well, because attribution, management, control, tracking, tracing, there's so many things. And there are a number of creators. And what I think is super cool is a region of the world that was always known for movies and TV has now started to become a tech hub. LA, let's just call it out. LA started to become a tech hub, especially around Web3. And there's so many different things that we can talk about later, man. But is there any other stories that we didn't cover that maybe almost made the cut last week that we didn't, you just didn't quite make it, but you wanted to, like, if you could do an extra one, which one would you have done?
If I could have done an extra one, it would have been the one I started to do last night, and I ran out of juice and I couldn't get it finished. And that is something that kind of follows up with what you did at the pay show that we did in 2019, where I saw that Sean Diddy Combs is now buying in 3 states existing. There's 2 companies, Cresco Corp and Columbia Care Incorporated, that are selling off some assets because they're merging, and those are 2 of the largest cannabis retail distribution companies in the United States. And Sean Diddy Combs is buying manufacturing and distribution of a Black-owned cannabis brand in New York, Chicago, and I forget the other city, but it will come to me.
Diddy's Mitty.
Yeah, and essentially those 2 companies are blowing up due to recent legislation and recent decriminalization and all that sort of thing. I think that industry is going, because it is such a powerful industry. As an illegal industry, it was a hugely powerful cash industry. As a legal industry, it's going to be even more powerful. And I think that is something that people really need to be aware of moving forward, that the crypto industry and the cannabis industry are going to really unify, and that's really going to push Web3, because it's easy to be in the metaverse when you're high. Just saying.
Man. Yeah. So, it's interesting you bring that up, is because a lot of people don't realize it, but that industry is huge, as you mentioned, but one of the largest growers in California is actually owned by Mike Tyson. Then you've also got a number of other folks that are really focused in, and this isn't your grow it in the backyard, grow it in the ditch. This isn't that type of stuff. These are chemical engineers that are scientifically diving into this stuff. They're really understanding and diving into how it impacts the overarching human body and the different strains and all the different things that go along with it. So you're going to see a lot more of this. And I've worked with a number of banks in the cannabis space. There's probably 5 that come off the top of my head that I've worked with, and they're all really poised to really help simplify that chain. There are a handful of software providers out there that are trying to do it, but they run into some restrictions. But being able to leverage crypto in that space, being able to leverage non-fungible tokens in that space, all of this is starting to come together. And so I think that's going to be a really big piece that you see. And, if you would have asked me a year ago or 2 years ago, I would have said, hey, anytime now it's going to be decriminalized across the country. And it's no longer going to be a scheduled narcotic. It's actually going to be just like tobacco. I'm really struggling now to try and figure out when it's going to happen. I don't have a crystal ball, but it is really starting to feel like we're getting closer and closer and closer. And when it does happen, you're going to see a flood of different solutions in the marketplace. And it's going to feel a lot like crypto. And I'm just saying that right now. It's going to feel a lot like crypto, where you've got 2 or 3 or 4 really, really big guys that everybody looks at as the stakeholders. And then you're going to have thousands of other pieces that are out in the place while people figure out how to live and work and manage in the new world of cannabis when it is completely decriminalized, 100% decriminalized. And that is it's going to blow up, and then it's going to come back in, and you're going to have a handful of really, really strong companies in that are moving things forward.
I, for one, am really surprised that the federal government has not yet viewed it as a way out of getting rid of our deficit. And has not leveraged that to get rid of the deficit as of yet. Because I think if they put a 20% tax and decriminalized it nationwide and let the banks and the distribution companies work together, I think that very quickly, just like Colorado started giving taxes back to its citizens at the end of the year, I think that that would right the economy. I really think that would right the economy, especially right now. And especially with the current mindset of the sentiment of the country. It seems to be welcoming change right now and looking for ideas for change and looking for solutions. So that's my take on it.
Yeah, I can see that perspective. I'm. I sit here and I think about how much pressure is against it still. And I'm trying to understand how we would be able to leverage it. And here's where I go with this. In California, there's a gray market that has really started to show up. And the reason why the gray market is showing up is because it has become so cost prohibitive to do two things. One, to own and run a dispensary, and two, to be a patron of that dispensary. It has become cheaper to buy off the gray market than it has been to go to the dispensary. And the dispensaries are feeling that because they're getting all of the registration and all of the licensing and all of that and all the insurance. And on top of that, there's a tax on top of that. So then you may be able to get it off the gray market for, and I'm just making up numbers here. Let's just say it's $5 an ounce, but it's going to cost you $25 an ounce at the dispensary. All right, well, now I'm going to go find my guy on the corner and just pick it up from him. And so it if you overburden it in regulatory and tax spaces, you're going to force that gray market to happen, and it gets really, really shady. So you gotta balance that enough so that the gray market isn't as interesting, and that's kind of my perspective.
Yeah, what I see in total in this whole thing is it seems like, I'm not sure about the rest of the world, but it seems like America's sentiment is we're becoming more tolerant of people's vices. Essentially is what we're doing. And I see crypto I see cryptocurrency as a vice, right? I see gambling as a vice. I'm seeing tobacco as a vice, alcohol, obviously, marijuana, right? So it seems like there's, during the pandemic, there was a lessening of social norms, right? We all dress like we're going to Walmart now. You know what I mean? We're not going to offices. We're not. That's starting to return a little bit, but the casualness is definitely more in America now, and I think that casualness allowed that sentiment to drop and be more accepting of people wanting to do whatever they want to do. I mean, I think the feeling is, well, it's all going to be over soon, so do what you like.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting you reading that, because if you really look back to 2020 when everything got shut down and only essential businesses were allowed to be open, liquor stores, gas stations, and in states where there were dispensaries, those were all deemed essential.
So you could get your alcohol, you could get your cigarettes, you could get your weed, you could get your booze. Definitely got to keep that moving. And it spiked. It spiked like crazy during the pandemic too, right? Opioid addiction spiked like crazy. Alcohol addiction spiked like crazy. Mental health.
Well, they were all essential.
Issues. Yeah. They're essentials.
So,
essential to not being healthy. Yeah.
Well, Bruce, we've went all over the place. We've talked about crypto. We've talked about social networks. We've talked about financial apps. We've talked about meme coins. I mean, dude, we've hit on so many things this week. Man, I appreciate you bringing me on to have this discussion. We always have great calls, and I'm just glad we're finally recording them to share with everybody else. Is there anything you want to share with anybody? Obviously, I'm going to say, hey, go like, subscribe, follow Bullet Point Bulletins and Fintech Confidential if you want to dive deep into the people, the technology, and how people are getting paid and are going to get paid. Definitely do that. And Bruce, man, what else you got for us?
Bruce Burke is looking for some work. Bruce Burke is looking to do something for somebody. Bruce Burke is looking to take his power that manifests from the end of his fingertips and apply it to your product or service and make you fantastically rich. That being said, so please like, subscribe, share, follow.
All that
I don't know.
Stuff.
All those things. Hit the buttons. All the buttons, and just love us to death. Share it with everybody, and thank you guys. Thank you, Ted. I really enjoy this. I didn't think I would enjoy this. Listen to myself for an hour as much as I did, but apparently a half hour is you, so that makes it much more enjoyable. And he left already. No, there he goes.
No,
Your webcam utility flipped. Yeah, folks, we're going to start doing this on a regular basis. This is our first one, and please continue to stay with us. And I've known Ted long time now. 2010, I think I first met him. So we're still
over
going
a decade,
at it.
my man.
Over a decade later, Ted and I are still friends. So we're still going at it, and I think we've seen a lot of change in that decade, and I'm looking forward to the rest of this decade here and see what kind of changes come out of this.
Definitely. Well, Bruce, thanks again, man. And I can't wait to do the next one. And it'll be interesting to see if the news stays in the same path or if it starts to pivot a little bit. But thanks again, man. And have a great week.
You too. All the best, Ted.